Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday. Today's the 18th of July. My name's Steve Vettel, your risk manager, protecting you in some cases from yourself. So welcome everyone to our Forecast for Trade Week call. I want to make sure that everybody can see my screen. Risk disclosure is up and ready to go. Somebody could just pop something in the chat window for me, please. Hey, Steve, we can hear you okay. We can see your screen. I know you guys like that 777 thing, so that's cool. The Q&A window is open, so feel free to ask questions. Just type them up, and as I answer them, we'll go through them today. I'm going to try and have the call to about 45 minutes today. Tell you what, let me just read the risk disclosure first here. So trading the foreign exchange market carries high risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Trading on margin and utilizing leverage can carry an even higher level of risk that can lead to a complete loss of investment funds. So I want to make sure that you share all of this information. And for those that can translate it for me, that would be fantastic. So do keep in mind that the company recommended settings is a big no-no. So I am the one really basically recommending settings, kind of like when we switched over to high volatility towards the end of March, or I should say the end of May. Auvoria Prime does not have any recommended settings. We're not a financial advisory firm. We just license software that users can use however they want at their own risk and discretion. So some of the software does come with default settings upon initial setup, which the users have the ability to customize. We really have nothing to do with the customer's brokerage account. We don't manage money. We don't solicit or take investments. We don't trade for you. We don't recommend any brokers. We just license software, and we have put a tremendous amount of time, especially what I'm about to learn in about a week, in terms of a huge sea change in the educational platform that we are building. Great stuff to come. So please stay tuned on that. So my settings are not company recommended settings. So let's real quickly, let me switch over to the Auvoria back office. So please share this with anybody that, if you go to the dashboard up here in the upper left-hand corner and you click on the product that you're trading, in this case for Einstein, okay, you'll see the onboarding stuff. And this is really good stuff I would go through. It's been a lot of work that's put onto this. I've never seen another company in this particular space that has put this serious amount of work into education. Everything from yours truly to all the coaches that do a great job out there. My hat's off to you. Looking at the resources, which you can see the recordings, subscribe to the Telegram channels for both myself and Jesse. I highly recommend that, as long as you're sharing results. The best way to do it is through the Facebook. Okay. Also, do keep in mind, as far as an announcement, in the next few weeks, AP will be launching no less than 4 expert advisors. So there's going to be 4 new types of EA software coming out, next to the 3 we already have available. So this is going to be just a whole marketplace we're going to be able to say now. And keep in mind, we already know that one of the softwares has proven to run very well on accounts. It's just $500. Okay. So if you haven't already, please spread the word on that. Spread it like wildfire. So the key here is that with new options to the EA marketplace, and I'm always touting this, obviously, in my regular profession with clients, it's adding in a much higher level of diversification. So don't ask me any questions about how many software licenses and stuff, because we haven't worked all that stuff out. Quite frankly, I don't know the answers to that. I'm kind of ignorant on that subject at this point. So someone asked me, can you install Einstein on multiple accounts? I'll let somebody else handle that in the chat window, because I try to stay away from how much software is going to be released versus what. my job is essentially just to educate you guys. So let's move on to Forex calendar. Hopefully you could see the Forex calendar now. Do keep in mind you want to change the date forward. I often make this mistake. We are looking essentially now for the Eastern time zone, which looks like it's incorrect. Let's just set that up. There we go. So 1 p.m. East Coast time. Just go back and reset the calendar here. We'll move forward to the next week. There we go. All right. So next week, starting Monday, Governor Lowe speaks. For anybody trading the Australian dollar, he is actually a really good central banker. Real smart guy. He's typically more hawkish than dovish, which just basically means that's good for a currency if somebody's hawkish in their tone as far as the speech. But on any particular kind of Q&A, I guess it just depends upon what's happening. I don't really have a lot really to say about that, other than I probably would make sure if you're not trading around news and you are trading a ring related to the Australian dollar, I would probably have that turned on. So if you look inside the software here, this is the live account that we're running. These are the settings. This account actually had a pretty good week. Here are the settings. We have been absolute broken records if you're new to the game about our high volatility settings. They have been serving us well. They are conservative. It's really just a matter of flipping the default settings out of the box in the software between these two numbers. Okay. So let's go to the big account. This is the euro denominated live large account. We are had a pretty good week. Anything that is not negative these days, it seems like a good week, right? But the account's actually up. The little live account's actually done better. Let's show that as well. Oops. So I wanted to take a little time. For those of you who are new to this, this is a myfxbook.com. I highly suggest everybody get this set up and linked to your brokerage account. It's not that difficult to do, although you'd think that we'd be able to get this straightened out, but we've had some problems with this, and I have the team on this so that we can actually post the link to this directly, which we have not done yet. We have the link to the large MyFXBook account. If you want that link, you can go to my trade tracking channel on Telegram. So we had a 2.35% this week, which is good. We will take that any day, especially with the high volatility settings. We were in very little drawdown. Counts up 5.22%, and the month is approximately half over. So granted, and I do understand when you look at the statistics, 479 trades is not a lot. But I pay attention as I talk a lot about the win rates, without getting into a lot of this information. The win rates are very important from the standpoint that as long as risk is being managed, again, high volatility settings, and your win rates are running, high 50s, high 60s. If it's high 70s, that's even more fantastic. That's really kind of what you want to see. So we trade the 3-ring main pairs with this particular account. So Euro JPY, Euro USD, USD JPY. Okay. Now this particular pair has not been as profitable as the two above it, which we could have said almost the opposite a month ago. So we choose to trade from a diversification standpoint, all three in this particular ring. Other notes in the last week, more consistency, which has been good. I'm actually going to talk about the charts a little bit. I had a meeting this week, I should say this past week, with the developers of the two main EAs. I talk about Einstein Alexander. They have some real interesting information on trading some additional instruments. So we're going to go through that, but the numbers have actually been fantastic. It is not a currency ring that we're trading. It's an indice. So when I get a little more data on that, we've had a little longer testing period and we think it's worth introducing to everybody, I'll bring out all the settings and show you how it's working. And we'll probably set it up under one of my instances on the account so we can have something additional to look at and follow. And if we think it's worthwhile, we'll take a live. What other points of note do I want to see? So we got performance, trades, win rates. You can always play around with all this other stuff in here. I don't really get that deep into it. Each thing is defined in here, which is actually quite cool. So if you want to learn about, I always try to expand in knowledge each week. If I was a beginner and just understanding general statistics on how to analyze an account, outside of going through and making sure you understand the settings in each that they represent. This is something we're going to be focusing on a lot more in our upcoming training and onboarding for new subscribers. So it's going to be a lot more streamlined for new subscribers. You're going to see some stuff that I've shot. You're going to see some videos that some of the other coaches have shot. But all in all, the goal really is to get everybody completely up to speed before they even set a demo or God forbid they jump ahead of demo and get a live account going without doing it, as we don't want to see that. So you always want to make sure you run a demo account before the live. All right, so this, what else I want to say about this? Jump back over here and take a quick peek at this, the big account. So one of the questions I got, we've been running this account a little bit longer, but what we have done with these accounts is essentially for now a month and a half, we've had the high volatility settings in place, and they present an opportunity to make almost as much profit, but they have less risk. And that's really essentially my role, is to keep the risk low and the profits as high as possible without taking unnecessary chances of blowing one's account out. Let me just close this down. All right, developers are running this week. Let's go back to the calendar. I think I've covered everything. I always take a snapshot of this and I put it inside my notes and put it into the back office. You can always go into the resources tab, which is on the left-hand corner in the back office, see all the videos and comments I make for the upcoming week. So at this point, let me just jump into something new I'm going to introduce to you guys. And this is a software called TradingView. For those of you who are familiar with the software, it's actually very good. I set up an account with these guys this week. I know that Jesse uses them as well. So I thought it'd be smart to have some consistency in what we're presenting as far as technical analysis discussions. I am just going to be sticking to real high level stuff on just the main pairs that we trade. I'm not going to be digging into a lot of other minors. I'm just stick to the majors. If something stands out, I'll talk about it. I'm going to try and start off always with the Euro US dollar. This is just a daily chart. These are what you call candlesticks. Each represent high, low, and the range of each day is represented by the wick. And then the high, low is represented by the color. So red candles opened up at a high as an example, finished at a low. That's why the candle's red. Opened higher, finished lower, red candle. Essentially opening higher for the day, finishing lower is red. Opening lower and finishing higher is the green candle that you see. And the wick represents the range. It's just a simple candlestick to one of the basic cores of technical analysis. I have clients that, no kidding, are 90 years old, some of my wealthiest clients, and they still ask me, even though they give a rat's ass about technical analysis. They're like, hey, can you show me that candle chart again? So I try to educate all ages on this from just at least a general perspective, because it helps put into perspective, hopefully, once you grasp the concept a little better, of kind of what's going on globally, right? So I always start with the S&P 500. As you can see, we've been in a tight range since, arguably since the end of May. Been trading inside of about a 250-point range, just bouncing back and forth. But now we're sort of stalling out. I don't really think there's much to read into this other than the fact that the summertime volumes are typically lower. A lot of people are on vacation. the markets have been much slower. I expected more volatility last week that actually took place. That was a good thing. I was glad I was wrong. Looking at this, though, the concern I have, if you can see here, the euro US dollar, I jump back to, we're trading up against a really important level, which is essentially the 115 to the 1450-ish area. Okay. So this was a reactionary high during the heat of the pandemic as global central banks were going bananas with bailout packages and cash being thrown into the marketplace and stabilizing volatility. We saw a lot of that. So my concern, as I have elaborated to a few, is that in the U.S., both the House and the Senate will be reconvening on July 20th, which essentially is Tuesday. And a lot of different organizations, both left and right, are screaming for bailout too, as other countries are as well, because the pandemic shot the numbers a lot higher, whether you believe the numbers or not. The point is that it is bringing our policymakers essentially to the table. Hopefully they will put something together. So if the markets, and I'm saying any markets, credits, equity markets, certainly the currency markets, if they get a whiff that a second bailout package is coming, it could really wreak havoc. And it certainly could shoot this euro US dollar above 115, in which case there is just pockets of stops up there from a duration of period of time, right? So now that isn't a statement to be made that, oh, Steve's saying things are going to go bananas, so we turn the software off. No, we're running this week because ideally it takes policymakers weeks, in some cases years in this damn country to come up with something solid. I think they're a lot more motivated this time. Whatever they come out with, it's going to add more debt to our country's already mounting debt in the trillions, which is sad, and it has a undervaluing effect on the currency. Now, whether it'll set it ablaze or not, I don't know. But just be careful on that from this perspective. Also, take a look at the huge wedge that is forming on the daily chart. Remember, each of these candles represents one day. But look at this wedge that is forming. Typically, when this comes to a tip or a point, you get a reactionary move one way or the other. My bet is that bailout 2 comes from the U.S. House and Senate when they reconvene next week. There's a good chance we could see a big rip up, okay? Essentially an increasing in the value of the British pound relative to the U.S. dollar. So these are two charts I would take a look at. Looking at the USD JPY, which is sort of a reverse situation. Not a lot going on. You can see the importance, obviously, the 106 area. Actually, probably even put a line here. This software is actually really easy to use. I'll tell you, this stuff's only, I thought this was a lot more costly program. You could buy the pro version of this, I think, for like 20 bucks a month. So, pretty good stuff. Allows you to do some charting. Really easy to use. You know, I'll tell you one great thing about this modern technology as far as charting. Some of the old software packages, you know, the early days of IRT, which is Linsoft, which is what I use, or the early days certainly of a CQG, which is a generic version of a Bloomberg terminal, which is the most expensive out there. It's almost 2 G's a month to have a Bloomberg terminal. It took a lot of money to have very sophisticated software platforms. And now it's become much cheaper. So that's great. You don't have to spend 2 G's a month to have a good charting package anymore. Another comment on this. I guess if we were to look down to a smaller time frame, actually, I'm not going to get involved now. Let's just stick to the daily charts right now. I don't want to confuse you guys if this is a fairly new concept to you. Just be watching essentially for about the 106 spot 20 level. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, Vlad, that's exactly right. So for those that are out there wondering, how did Michael Bloomberg get so rich? That's the reason. 2 G's a month for a terminal. That's pretty much Summer volumes in currencies, equities, and the credit markets tend to be lower because of just vacation. Obviously, this pandemic globally has thrown a big monkey wrench into a lot of families' operations, and our hearts go out to those that have been affected by C-19. But we will get through it. And I'll tell you, it'd be one of the first times in my entire life that whichever company is the first to the vaccine, I'm going to be purchasing a stock at an overpriced level, hoping to make even more on the ride up. Right? All right. So let me jump in here. I think that's all I wanted to cover as far as going forward. If you guys got any questions about settings or anything, just let me know. Okay. So, Tamika, if you go to my Telegram channel, there is a complete explanation in detail on the trend levels before hedging. Onboarding video is not updated to include this new feature. The onboarding video. Yes, that's true. Just go to my channel to explain. Are you able to give any detail on the upcoming new EAs and the new marketplace fund that just recently started? How would getting a different EA work if I currently have Alexander? So in the US, I assume it will continue to be alerts. How will the other EAs be different? Okay, so do understand that Alexander and Einstein are what's called a martingale trading algo. If you don't know what that is, you can Google it. I'm not going to get into it, the detail of that. There are other types of trading that take place out there. One of the most popular in the world is called trend trading. That's where essentially this isn't probably the best chart to illustrate that, but maybe looking here, here I'll draw you a couple lines. And let's do this. Okay, sloppy channel, but whatever. Purposes of illustration. This is what's called a channel. Okay, for those trading a trend trading software, if you're long or short, typically the software will take trades, highs and lows throughout this particular channel that we're trading in. Right, essentially looking to short the top of the channel or go long at the bottom. That's one other type of algo that's built. There are a lot of algos that have been built, both trading equities and indices and currencies, that utilize the concept of trend trading. There are other types of trading as well. The trend's one of the more popular. So I know a couple of our EAs are going to be more trend focused. And as I get more details on how the other EAs operate, the point is that ideally in a perfect world, here's how I would envision this for a subscriber. And obviously it's going to take an extra, a few extra bucks. And I get everybody's not sort of at that point, but maybe this will encourage you to save and build up, bigger investment accounts. But if I was a smaller subscriber investor, I would want to have, maybe $2 or $3 grand trading Einstein or Alexander. Then I'd want to have $2 or $3 grand live trading in one of our other EAs that we're going to introduce. Maybe have like a third, right, EA, one of the other ones that we're introducing. So essentially, you have a whole portfolio trading currencies and maybe some indices for you with the MT4 platform and your broker. But you'll have different trading styles, right? So one will be a trend trading, maybe. One like the martingale is more of a rubber band type trading strategy, just essentially putting in deeper levels through the sequence as the markets, sell off or down. There's other types of trading out there that trade based on volume composites, which isn't the easiest thing necessarily to do in Forex. But this is actually what I focus mostly on outside of the Forex markets in the futures and equities. I look for volume profiles, which is just nothing more than pockets of where executions took place over any given period of time, whether it be 5 minutes all the way back to a composite, which will look back many, many years and see where are all the places that the big levels of, an Apple computer or a Tesla or whatever has executed at, and it builds volume up based on those levels, which is ideally a place I would love to be able to get the right data to move to in the Forex world, but it's not offered down at the retail level. It's only offered at the very, very high level as far as understanding volume. So there's a long explanation, but stay tuned. I personally think Euro US dollar, Euro JPY. I do too. Thank you. So I will start fresh with 2 pairs this coming week. Which 2 pairs would you recommend? So just back the old tried and faithful here. This is the 3 ring that we trade. You can see them. It's also the 3 that I'm talking about that you see on the screen here. At least the 2 of them I do. But we trade the main Euro JPY, USDJ. So from just a statistical perspective, let's just take a look at the summary right here. Okay. This is the pair, if I was going to kick one out, this is the one I would not be trading. Stats just haven't been there. Now watch, I say that, and now it'll go out and have like a fantastic week and I'll look like a fool, right? But historically, this pair, historically being just this year, has not offered quite the opportunity. So I would trade the top 2. All right, next question. I do not know for sure if the DAs will be launched. I know that at some point in the next month. Yes, the possible double top on, here, let me switch back. Possible triple top, technically, on the Euro US dollar. Not necessarily an indicator it could go down. Remember that. You notice we're hanging out here. I think a lot of the world is looking to see, you know, what screwy bill the U.S. can come out with to take on more debt, to try and offer more assistance to businesses and individuals, right? And if that's the case, I think there's a potential that we can blast off up here. Now, oftentimes when something like this happens, really the key to the movement above this level is where it closes the next day, right? Not on an hourly chart or 5 minutes or 15. You want to actually see a couple, and some people would argue a whole week, longer term technical folk. You want to see it close and hold above the 15 level. That's why those short this currency are having pockets of, you know, whatever bets against it not going up and being a triple top, would be getting a little nervous at that point. If we're spending a lot of time up here, there's a potential it could rip higher. What are the recommended settings for this week? They're right here. We've already talked about these exhaustively. Settings haven't changed there, Anonymous. So these have been the settings for now a month and a half, called the high volatility settings. My account size is 2,800. Shall I use start position of 0.02? I would not do that. If this is a live account you're talking about, Elizabeth, I would start with 0.01. Remember, our accounts are 0.01 per 3K. Yes, you make less money. I agree. Devang, through the developers, Devang's question is, have you seen $1 million account using the AI? I'm not sure which AI you're speaking of. Einstein, I guess. But the slightly adjusted version of these settings are getting ready to go live on a $30 million account in about a month. Please name the pair to omit of the 3. All right, so Sandy, were you listening? Just kidding. So let me jump back here. See this pair? I'm not telling you to turn it off, right? I'm just telling you that this pair hasn't put up quite the numbers the others have. Does that mean it will going forward? I have no clue. It could. I could be wrong, right? So why not stay diversified? If you have a large enough account, if it's a demo, why does it matter, right? But the idea behind the demo is that you want the settings in a demo account to mirror what you want it to do in a live account. So if you're saying, hey, I want to set up a live account for $3,000, run a demo for $3,000, spend some time going through the demo, making sure you understand all the settings, making sure that you hook it up to my FX book. Obviously, you know, if you ever hook it up and you want to share it, just make sure that all of this information here that you unlock before you share it, if you share it with someone like myself or wherever, I'm always looking forward to good MyFX book links that are done with high volatility settings. So that's what I'm most interested in seeing from the troops right now. So if you guys want to send me an email with that, that's cool. Just make sure I can see everything that I can see here and that both of these track records are verified, which I know can be quite a pain in the butt sometimes. That's why my hats off to Patrick, the master, for getting lots of this stuff straightened out for me. So hopefully that answers this question. Can I replace US dollar for and still trade three currencies? Okay, so here's the problem with Lewis's question. He said, what can I replace the USD JPY for to still trade three currencies? So this isn't necessarily something that Lewis has done wrong, but this is the problem with this thinking. Okay, again, I'm going out and saying now I'm smarter than the software, right? I'm not, and I want to take this out and replace it with something else. What would I do? Would it be replacing it with a GBP USD, right? Maybe. Although with this thing in wedge formation right now on this daily chart, I would be less willing to replace it with this currency. I would just keep it with the current ring it's on. For what it's worth, Japan is a bank holiday next week. It's a big week for time off for a lot of the Japanese folks. So I don't expect any craziness coming out from any bank, any regulator, any central banker during this week. Let's hope I'm right and not wrong, and anything doesn't send it ablaze. So for now, I would stay diversified in this three ring. Remember, you guys, this information is provided for your guys' benefit. You're welcome to do whatever you want, but at your own risk. Can you turn Einstein into a trend trading over martingale, or will AP come out with trend trading AI? So my hope is, AC, that it is a full trend trading software. Okay, I know for a fact that there are trend tradings EAs in our beta test groups. Okay, so whether those are being released or not, I can't comment on, because I seem to be the last person they want to give this information to, because they probably wouldn't want me spouting it off in the conference call, right? So I always wait to hear from the authorities on what's going to be released, and then I will communicate it to you guys, because I'm going to have the same learning curve that everybody else has, right? Hooking it up to new accounts, running demos, going through, learning how the software trades from a standpoint of a sequence or a gear that may be added to the software, right? But one thing I can promise you is that even though these softwares, they're not all going to just be plug and play, guys. And I know a lot of you just don't want to hear that. You have to stay plugged into changes that take place in all software, whether it's automated or not. Okay, whether you're making trades, or I should say accepting recommended trades or not. Our next question. With the 30 million US dollar account you mentioned, will the high volatility settings produce? So I don't know, David, what the settings are going to be in the $30 million account. I have no clue. I will tell you when I find out, but I hesitate to tell anybody what the settings would look like on a $30 million account, because it does not apply to anybody in their accounts, including myself, right? I mean, hey, it's great for shits and giggles, but it's not something you want to turn loose on your own accounts, at least for now. Unless you have a $30 million account, in which case, send me an email. We'll show you how it's going to be set up. What lot size would you recommend for a 30K account? Yes, right now, also 0.01 per 3K. Just like the our big account I'm showing you here. This is 0.01 per 3K. I'm not a fan, Tejas, of Ichimoku. I could care less about the crap, looking at clouds, and it just doesn't really work for me. Don't like the analysis. No, Rob, I'm not going to be trading a $30 million with Einstein. It's going to be automated. We are Looking to trade a large account though, not quite 30 million. Now, let's see. Will the new EA also going to have high fall? I have no idea what the settings are going to be on the new EA. Okay. No idea. If the EA is a trend EA, okay, again, speculation on my part, right? Let's just spitballing here. If it's an EA that is a trend trading, it's going to have completely different volatility settings than something that's martingale. You know, if anything, a trend trading will be less volatile, depending on how the software is built and how the AI trades. It may not take 7, 8, 9 levels in the sequence as far as trades, and I may just hit the higher low of the particular trend, like I showed you guys here on the S&P. So that's how trend trading works. This is very popular because it's low risk. You're just going with the trend. Okay. All right. Did not change the stop loss to 400 for the coming week. Are you seeing something that I'm not? Let's take a look. $250. Not sure where you're seeing the 400. Let's see what other questions we got. What happens if I change the chart time frame to 1 minute on the MT4 instead of day one? So, Courtney, if you want to trade this on a 1 minute chart, you can. I'm just going to caution you that, especially if it's a live account, this thing is going to be tearing through trades. Okay, I mean a lot of trades, which will generate a lot of commissions depending on the forex broker that you use. So unless you know what you're doing, and in some way you can demonstrate that to somebody, I would have that set up on a demo, because it's basically going to turn this account into a raging scalper in terms of its trading capacity. So if you want that, you're willing to shoot for the moon, right? I like to say that a 1 minute chart, it's kind of like going to Vegas and putting it all on black, right? Especially if you don't know what you're doing. Okay. Let's see what happens if I change chart time frame to 3 minutes. Hey, you're welcome, Jenna. Thank you. Last Thursday, more info was shared about the first new EA during the company update webinar. More info, as well as revealing the names of the new software, will be coming Thursday. So again, in the company update webinar. So this is straight from corporate, guys. So last Thursday, more info was shared about the first new EA. I didn't listen to that call. So during the company update webinar, more info, as well as revealing the names of the new softwares, will be coming Thursday in the company update webinar. So stay tuned, guys. Exciting stuff, man. All right. Anything additional I want to address? So I choose, actually, this is a good question. Why do I choose trailing equity? I choose trailing equity over a fixed weekly goal. Remember, you can double click on this thing and you can choose a fixed weekly goal. If you choose fixed weekly, remember, you got to click OK to save it, obviously. The line below it becomes active, okay? So in this case, if I had a fixed weekly goal of 3%, as soon as the account hits up 3%, which is a great week, by the way, it shuts off and you're done. You're done for the week. The problem with fixed weekly goals is if you're shooting for the upside, this is a more aggressive stance inside the software. So if you're just shooting for a fixed weekly goal, you have no protection. So essentially, the 4 lines below it are not active because they're all related to trailing equity, which is essentially the same thing. You just have a protection factor that starts. So if you have trailing equity set, fixed weekly goal is inoperable, but the trailing equity start percentage now becomes operable. In this case, it's 2%. Once he counts up 2%, I like to call it the hunter inside the algo, wakes up and he starts protecting the equity in the account. right? So if your account's at $1,000 and it goes up $20, essentially you're up 2%. That triggers the trailing equity, and now you have the hunter in the account. If it was to fall back to up $10, essentially 1%, it would blow you out, and it'll allow that to go on. Yeah, that's kind of all I want to say on related to that. Two important factors. One, you're shooting for an upside goal. You have no protection related to it, right? Fixed weekly goal only. The account could go into big drawdown, right? There's no protection. Whereas trailing equity, which we love, we choose to be on trailing equity. And I can tell you the trailing equity is going to be trading on even some of the largest accounts that we set to go live with these different EAs. I'm more than likely will always have this, You can always change the trailing equity start to a higher number, right? Maybe you want to shoot for it to go off at 3% or 4%, right? If you start getting into 5 or 7 or 8, unless you've got a software that's just killing it from a scalping standpoint, then maybe you want to have a higher goal, but you really need to know what you're doing at this level, obviously. But looking at the goals, these are very good goals, because in regular performance land or retail world or institutional, a 1% performance or a 2% performance a week is actually fantastic in the long run. I mean, there are people with billionaires behind their name because they've set up hedge funds that have done 1 to 2% a week net over a long period of time. It's a killer performance. Jeanette, we love you, by the way. Hey, Steven, do you ever look at a chart for one of the pairs on Sunday night and decide to adjust force a long or short? So the problem with at least me doing that is I don't really have a lot of time to be following this stuff from just a management standpoint. I mean, I put multiple hours a week into these calls, sometimes 5-6 hours a week into the Auvoria Prime stuff. I have a family. Obviously, I've got a big business, which is about to expand a whole bunch for me, which, stinks as far as my own personal time. But I don't do a lot of manual trading anymore. I mean, sometimes I'll go in and obviously execute trades inside of clients' accounts on our TD Ameritrade Veo advisor platform, but I don't really do a lot of manual trading in Forex. I just let the software handle that. Most of the manual or discretionary trading that I do is in the futures and equities land. Just because, as I told you guys, again, my chosen path of trade style is volume-based trading on composites, which is not offered at Forex. Yeah, so that means the goal is actually 2%. That's correct, Lizzie. All right, what other questions? When you pulled up the GBP, yes, I said shuffle for stop loss. You pulled up the GPD UDD chart. I'm not sure what you're talking about, Carrie. Might want to elaborate. GBP USD. Are you talking about this chart? I'm confused as to what you're asking. This is just a chart. There's no stop losses related to this. Would you recommend increasing the trailing equity start percentage at any point? Where you can increase this is as your account grows. Okay, so give you an example. Let me switch over here. So here's the 3K high volatility settings account on my FX book. If I had an account that, in this case, we funded it with $3,000, it's up over 13.5% since June 1st, which has done very well. Think if you could get 13.5% on your big money the rest of your life every year, how killer that would be in terms of compounding, right? I know a lot of people lose sight of that, but it's a big deal. This is in 2 months, well, a month and a half. But if the account grew to say $4,000, you could up the trailing equity to maybe 4%. The trailing equity starts to 4% and the trail by 2, right? But then again, the account goes up 3% for the week, doesn't trigger, right? Because now it's set at 4. And then if the account drops 10%, you still have no protective factor in place, right? So just know that the higher you get these numbers, good if you know what you're doing and you can afford to lose the money and you're willing to take more of an aggressive stance, more risk. But just understand what you're doing. No, Jeanette, the software does not work any harder or easier depending on where these numbers are set. It still takes the same trades. Sequence, execution is the same. Trade all 3 pairs in the last weeks. I got out of the market on Wednesday night, but ended up in a loss in both weeks. Yeah, Euro, JPY, eat up all the profits. Challenge trade 2 pairs. Again, unwilling to say yes on that. I get this question a lot. It's probably, they see, or anybody sees essentially one pair not performing well. And in a lot of cases, it's sort of a myopic view. So I would ask you guys to take a broader look at a longer period of time. If I was allowed, which I'm not allowed to do, to show you some of the MyFX books for all of the previous versions of Einstein and Alexander over the last year, which is a much, much larger data set than the whole, few months we've been looking at here. It speaks volumes to how well all 3 of these pairs did on a much longer period of time, right? So you can always click on summary, see what each of the pairs have done, right? Hasn't done that great, looking at a profit and how it ate it up. Not saying to not do it. Again, all I can do is recommend on these calls what to do. You're welcome to take the pair out if you don't feel like it's working. And now, if you take it out and it starts to work, you can always bring it back in, I guess. But the problem, I guess, I have with this is that, if I do that, if I answer a question that way, then I'm essentially saying that I'm smarter than the software, and I'm not. Yes. So if you're using the fixed setting, the software will automatically close out and will shut itself down once the fixed percentage is reached. That's correct. Can you explain the red, yellow lines in the MyFX book chart? Yes. So the red line is the growth of the account. You can just hover over it. Shows you how the account has grown over time. The yellow line is the equity, or the value of the account, and how it's dropped. In this case, it took a hit. Notice it came back, took a hit again. Notice it came all the way back. This was obviously the very volatile first couple of weeks of June, and then it has continued to climb inside value. So notice we haven't tinkered with this other than to put the high volatility settings in place, right? So we haven't tinkered with the trailing equity. All we tinkered with was the range multiplier and the position size multiplier, which we just flip-flopped from the default settings. It's the only thing we've done. Brought less trades, yes. It brought potentially slightly lower profit potential, but it reduced risk by a bunch. Let's see here. You always show Einstein settings and I have Alexander. When I started back in May, I think you said both these were basically the same. I'm ringing correctly. Yes, Ella. I show Einstein because I don't have the time to accept Alexander trades. The phone be dinging all night long, and that's cool for people that want to accept that. I just don't have the time to be messing around with Alexander. Personally, I prefer Einstein. I know somebody's probably going to slap me across the face for saying that, but it's just because of the time factor for me. But the The problem with someone like me saying that is that I have seen a number of individuals that prefer Alexander over Einstein because one, they have the time and they can be more selective on the trades that they accept, right? Essentially, which is a more conservative stance. If you're somewhat in the know, and there's a real benefit to Alexander, of which I just don't have the time to mess with. Good questions, guys. Keep them coming. Let's see. If you were going to invest 50K, would you put it in one account or start multiple accounts to reduce risk? I'm not sure how multiple accounts would reduce risk unless those multiple accounts were trading different currency rings. Okay. So the problem with that is that we're showing the majors here, essentially the three majors that we trade in the ring, which is some of the more popular ones that are traded globally by most currency traders. But, there's 22 other currency pairs out there that trade, right? And, if you do want to do that, and you can afford the risk associated with trading a 50 grand live account, make sure you traded a demo first, obviously. You really understand. You've watched all my presentations till you're sick of hearing my voice. That kind of stuff. If you've accomplished all that, I probably would set one of the accounts to trade the GBP NZD ring that are the currency pair that Jesse does. So make sure you subscribe to his channel. Put a smaller amount in that account, and I would trade this main ring on the high volatility settings with 0.01 lot size per 3K. So the question is, would it be wise to use normal settings on Tuesday and then switch to high volatility? If you feel comfortable doing that, you certainly can do that. I always caution a national recommendation on something like that. Why? Because a lot of people don't want to mess around with the software. They don't, just getting to tune into these calls enough is a fair amount of work on my part. So I'd rather not muddy the waters with, discussions, but, you're certainly welcome to switch around your goals, right? If you have a fixed weekly goal of 3%, or you have a trailing equity start of 3%, it's the same thing, guys, right? It's just one. If they're both shooting for 3%, the trailing equity turns on the hunter to protect the account, and the fixed weekly goal doesn't. It just shuts off. So you'd have a better shot if they're both at 3% of having the trailing equity start at 3%, and the account can still climb higher, right? The problem with the fixed weekly goal is as soon as it hits that goal, you're out. It's off. You can certainly restart it, right, by hitting these buttons right here, okay? But that just restarts the process again, which I know some are comfortable doing, okay? Ideally, I think if I was just exceptionally plugged into charting what's going on, kind of similar to what Jesse does, he's got a lot of time for this stuff. And he's an expert at managing this, heck, I'd probably be resetting this thing all the time, right? I'm just trying to shoot for something higher. As long as there's not crazy volatility going on in the market, you're doing all this stuff in front of a news story. So you always want to be really cognizant of what's going on in news release land, right? Especially from central banks before you start messing with a lot of that stuff. But yeah, you're certainly welcome to do it. Let's see. Yes, you're welcome. Thank you. When you say high volatile, how do I switch this? Peter, we've been kind of talking about this a lot. If you go over to my screen, if you're looking at my screen right now, these are the high volatility settings. I'm not sure if you're joining us late, but the position size multiplier is flip-flopped from the range multiplier. These look the opposite of what you see in the default settings out of the box. About Einstein once doing a counter trade. About Einstein once doing a counter trades to level 5. Why AI target price is not level 0? I'm not sure the answer to that one, Luke. You might want to elaborate on that question because I'm not understanding it. For Alexander, is there a time default that you would decline an alert 36 minutes after? So usually what I would do, and I know this is different for everybody, and everybody has their own best practices on this. If I was asleep and I woke up, I had a whole bunch of alerts, I would delete them all. And if they come back again, and as long as it's not going completely bananas in the market, I would accept the trades. I mean, a lot of times I will go in, and even if it's 15 minutes, I'll delete the alert because things could have completely changed in 15 minutes, right? Why would you want to execute a trade now based on what the software thought was a great trade 15 minutes ago, right? I mean, if they come in live, you can accept them if you are comfortable with what's going on and you're educated on the risk associated with it, right? But anything that has any age of duration or any age, I don't accept. Just delete them. All right, cool. 1 hour. See how much I love you guys. I've spent an hour with you guys today. So thank you, everybody, for joining. Today is the 18th of July. And I say, let the trades be with you. We genuinely hope the volatility continues to be low. If you want your homework assignment for the weekend is to pick up the phone or the text and call 2 or 3 people in your organization that you know for a fact are not plugged into these calls. If they understand English, get them to listen to the recordings. Okay. And other than that, everybody, I wish everybody a safe week. Let your hearts not be troubled. Don't pay attention to the news media because they're spewing mostly BS. And if you guys have any questions on, you can always send me an email.